G'day, fools, and welcome to another episode of, I think, is our favourite YouTube series, at least internally amongst the investment team, and that is our favourite investment books. We are pretty loud and proud nerds, let's be pretty clear, and investing books, or just books in general have to do with business, tend to be a pretty regular topic of conversation, something we want to share with you, our loyal, very appreciated audience. I have today with a book that I'm excited to hear about because I've not read this one. I think it's relatively new. And it gives him a chance to call me an old fogey one more time, which if you're watching any of our videos is something that Ryan Newman regularly does. G'day, Ryan. How are you?
I'm great, thank you, Scott. How are you, mate?
Good. I shouldn't verbal you directly. You've never called me an old fogey to my face at least, but you do reference my age from time to time. So I'll assume it's going to come up again. And this time it should, because I'm really excited to talk about The Spatial Web, a book by Gabrielle Renee and Dan Mapes. And this is about Web 3.0. And I've got to say, it's kind of around the edge of my kind of intellectual periphery. Can I put it that way? I know it's there. I kind of know what it is. I kind of know what it does. But it's also being hailed by really, really smart people as the next frontier, if you like, of technology generally. Right? I won't even say the web because it is Web 3.0, but it kind of goes beyond what we're used to, what we think we know. So I'm just going to basically straight out do the old man thing and say, mate, the spatial web, is that the same as Web 3.0? And if it is, what is the spatial web?
Yeah, look, Scott, I think it's all really part of Web 3.0. And I'm going to steer clear of your age today, Scott, but I am going to troll you a different way.
Thank you.
I actually spoke with our US colleague, Tim Byers, this morning.
Yes.
And he said, look, when you speak to Scott, I want you to troll him about this. He said,
no, what have I done?
He said, ask him, how many crypto exchanges are there in the world?
Oh, that's a very good question. I will say 300.
Actually, that's pretty close. And it's closer than what I said. I said, look, I'm aware of about 5 or 6. I could name them.
Yep.
And I said, so I would guess maybe 10. But the fact that he was asking me and told me to troll you, I said, look, maybe 150.
150? So I'm out by an order of magnitude, but not that bad.
Well, no, that was my guess, 150.
Oh, sorry.
Your guess was 300. I think the actual number I think I just saw a minute ago was about 453 or thereabouts.
Okay. So we're off by the same amount. Yeah, that's not bad. I'll take that.
Yeah, so there's actually a lot of them. And I also actually happened to see another figure on there as well. How many cryptocurrencies do you think there are?
Now, I haven't cheated, but I do read the emails from Scott Pape, the Barefoot Investor, and he claimed the other day there were 7,773 of them. I don't know if that's true or not. I had not bothered to source check him, so I do have an answer for that one. But tell me how close I am.
Yes, I should mention as well that the sources the figures that I'm mentioning here are actually from a website called coinmarketcap.com.
Okay.
And it claims that there are 16,900 cryptocurrencies.
Not close. Okay, fair enough.
So there's a lot of them. And now this is relevant to the book that I'm going to mention.
Good, okay.
And I say that...
You don't need to make me look silly, so I appreciate that. That's good.
I'll give you a heads up because there are a lot of buzzwords in this book.
Okay.
Web3, cryptocurrency, metaverse, blockchain, Internet of Things, you name it. Virtual reality, augmented reality.
Right.
But I think one thing for me is that, and one of the reasons that I decided to read this book recently was that a lot of these trends all seem like a lot of individual trends, and it's hard to make sense of them.
Yeah.
But reading The Spatial Web and actually trying to gain a better understanding of what's going on sort of indicates that all of these different trends are all going towards the same thing, which is Web3, and which is really essentially the spatial web. Mm-hmm. So I guess the buzzwords that I mentioned before, they're not mutually exclusive. They're all part of the same trend, which is really all towards the convergence of our physical world and our digital world.
Okay.
Now, this is very early days, and I think in many ways it is probably overhyped. Mm-hmm. I think in other ways it's also underhyped from lack of understanding. So It's an area that I think a lot of investors should start paying attention to and actually start learning about. And that's why I think this is a good book to read. So I'll step back for a moment. The spatial web. So let's walk through Web 1, Web 2, and what Web 3 is sort of perceived to be.
Awesome.
Web 1 really gave the, I guess, users of the internet the ability to read. So it was reading online articles and really a low ability to really interact from the user side. Web 2 gave that ability. It gave us the ability to post on Twitter, on Facebook, to create blog posts, etc. So it was really about read and write. Web 3 is really about the convergence of our two worlds and an attempt to decentralize data away from the monoliths of the internet today, the Googles, the Facebooks, you name it. And it's really about, I guess, shifting some of that ownership and benefit back to the user. It's also, I guess, a way to improve our interaction with the web. And that's where the spatial web comes into it. So really that convergence of the digital world and the physical world. And I'm going to just quickly read a very short paragraph from what was in the book, because it does describe some of the possibilities for what the future looks like. And really, as investors, that's what we're trying to invest in, isn't it? What the future looks like.
Absolutely.
So just one of the paragraphs says, today's web protocols were designed for interconnecting pages on computers, not people, places, and things in the real world. These protocols were designed for sharing information, not for managing and coordinating the activities of humans, machines, and AI, or engaging in real-time global trade and commerce. So just from that paragraph alone, it sort of highlights some of the limitations of the web as we know it today, and I guess some of the hurdles that stand in our way of creating what will be the future. Where the Internet of Things and all, we're getting data from every which direction, whether it be the toaster or the television or the bins, whatever. So I think that's one of the real reasons that I wanted to read this book, and why I think our listeners should as well, just to gain a better understanding of what the future could look like and what I guess it entails, or what would be involved to create that possibility.
Yeah, nice. Just one other question then. What is required? What does the book tell you? What did you learn from the book that you want to share with our viewers?
So I think for me, it gave me a bit of a better appreciation that it's not simply, in many regards, it's not simply building on what we have today. In many ways, it's actually about recreating what we have today by creating new code, by creating new processes and protocols. And I guess that, for me, gave me a slightly better appreciation of things like cryptocurrencies, which I have in the past sort of shunned to the side because of a lack of understanding. I sort of thought, well, we've got cash, why do we need that?
Right.
But for a Web 3.0 or a spatial web, as this book puts it, to really take off, maybe some of that actually does need to be recreated from the ground up for, to create entirely new systems. I would by no means suggest that our listeners go ahead and sell everything they've got and put it all in cryptocurrencies, as I've heard some very, very risk-oriented individuals around the world have done in the past. Yes. But I do think it creates the need or the appreciation to keep an open mind, to recognize that, hey, the future, the present, how the world is today, isn't necessarily how it will be in 10 years or 50 years. Just like the future that we know, the present that we know today isn't what life was like in 1970 when you were born. I told you, Scott. I would steer clear of your age. I'm sorry, I went there, but
couldn't help yourself. Fair enough. I don't blame you. I did lead you down that path. It sounds like a fascinating book, man. As you say, I think what the real benefit to me from someone who hasn't read the book seems like that kind of guided tour into what is at least underway right now, which if it becomes something you want to be at least aware of, and as you say, open to, rather than maybe either dismissive or just simply ignorant to it. Because as we should be learning machines as humans, as Charlie Munger says, and knowing a little bit more about what might be the next frontier of. And it's not even just web, right? To your point about it being spatial, is that it's the next frontier of technology, and I guess it sounds too over the top to say it's next frontier of society. But if it does actually become the predominant way we do interact, it's actually not, hyperbole to say that might be in part at least, or maybe even completely, the foundations of the way our kids, for example, interact with each other. And it's useful to know that from a just human interest. But of course, there may well be some investment opportunities, whether it's crypto, whether it's companies involved in doing this in any of the different facets. Let me spit that out. Sounds like a very worthwhile book. But who would you recommend it to? Is it all investors? Is it tech geeks? Is it diehards? If you're going to have a group of people in the room say you should read this book, Who should read Spatial Web?
Look, I found it to be a fairly easy book to read. It's a fairly quick read, about 250 pages or thereabouts. It's not overly complex in, I guess, the descriptions. I guess it does take a little bit of tech background or tech understanding at least to appreciate it more. But I think it is accessible for most investors. But I think for me, yes, tech geeks, I think absolutely should read this.
We'll love it, yeah.
But I think just investors in general, just to get a better understanding of, as I said, what the future looks like, because when you get a potentially what could potentially be one of the most disruptive technological advancements in our life, a lot will get disrupted. If that future transpires, then a lot of things will be disrupted in ways that we can't envisage. And I think keeping an open mind and reading this and sort of keeping an open mind into what the future could look like may give you a better understanding of some of the risks that you need to be aware of or need to, I guess, consider for all of the investments that you own, whether it be technology investments or more utilities or just anything that could be disrupted, potentially could be.
I like that, mate. It reminds me of Warren Buffett's quote. People talk about Warren Buffett saying, stick within your circle of competence, and we think that's true. But he also says, which is not repeated quite so frequently, you should try and expand that circle of competence. And as you say, even if you say, look, it requires a bit of tech understanding to get into, that's almost kind of the point, right? If you don't have that understanding now, you want to start developing it, because if the world does go this way, it's like, my parents, my grandparents, imagine them trying to pick up an iPhone from scratch, say, here, use this. We've been fortunate enough, and I'm not as old as you like to think, we've been fortunate enough to grow up with these things such that our own understanding of it and experience with it has kind of, it's evolved as we've gone. So that picking up an iPhone today, if you'd done that 980, you would have no idea. But because each step is incremental and iterative, you kind of get that learning. So if you're going to jump on the train, if you're going to be part of the journey, it's a good time, I think, now, while it is reasonably still young and you have books like the Spatial Web to get into, to maybe dip your toes in the water. Does that seem reasonable?
It absolutely does. My daughter is 3 years old, and she is very well advanced, I would say, on the iPad and the iPhone, and it's pretty incredible to think. So
it's amazing. I thought you were going to say she's already read the book. I thought, wow, that's impressive, but maybe not quite there, Josh. Give her a year and she'll be done.
Yeah, nighttime stories, bedtime stories.
Exactly. Let's only tell you about the Spatial Web again. All right, Ryan, thank you for spending some time telling us about the book, The Spatial Web, by Gabriel Renee and Dan Mapes. Really appreciate it. Sounds like a really interesting read. I might pick that one up myself. I have to say, I'm not an aficionado in this space, but your recommendation is good enough for me, and it sounds like a pretty good book, so I'll add that to my reading list. Viewers, we hope you've enjoyed our favourite investing books. We hope, I know, you appreciated it and got lots of value from Ryan's insight. And so from Ryan and myself and the whole Motley Fool team, until next time, Fool on.